Hello and welcome to PPN. This is the first video stream that we're going to be doing on this channel, and it's a special occasion today because the LUMIX S5 camera was just announced by Panasonic, and this whole live stream is a very spontaneous thing because I managed to get my friend and colleague and LUMIX Ambassador Ross Griev on the show. He's on the other line on Skype. I'm going to try to switch him in over here in just a minute. And we just watched the announcement of the S5, and I was fortunate as a journalist for PPN. I was able to get my hands on a S5. Hold on. And we'll be doing, let's do it with this camera. We'll be doing a little unboxing, talking about the camera, sharing our thoughts, and if you have any questions, feel free to send it in or type it in at YouTube. We are on Twitter, I'm streaming on my channel there, and also on Facebook. So we're going to be trying to go through these questions that you have and just going to answer them as best as we can. Like I said, I had a few days with this camera. Ross hasn't had a camera, the S5 in his hands yet, but he has a lot of experience with LUMIX cameras. So, and oh yeah, this is not sponsored by LUMIX. I don't get paid for this. This is just reviewing the camera. Ross, however, is an ambassador. So let me get Ross into the window. Hey Ross!
Hey Marco,
how are you doing?
How are you?
Good to see you on the show. Thank you that you were able to make time so quickly, and we're kind of excited, right, about this?
Yeah, very excited. It was just, hey, this is great. We're fortunate to obviously have a little bit of insider knowledge about what's coming up, which was great. And but it was just, grab the laptop and let's have a chat about it because it's so exciting.
Yes, very spontaneous. That's why usually you have this very professional setup, like I on my studio. But I caught you kind of in between jobs, and now you sit there, and we're gonna be doing this. So, so I think the first thing that people are curious about is, of course, what's different about this camera. You want to quickly describe the key facts, or really what the S1. Okay, I'm not an ambassador, and I've been using an S1 myself for about half a year now, and an S1R, and I must say it is a very professional, solid, also heavy and big camera, but it's a camera that I feel very comfortable using, and it's a camera that just feels right. However, also as a street photographer, sometimes it's a bit bulky. Although I love the image quality, and it just feels, if it's in the rain, I really never feel like this camera is going to fail on me. So the S5 it's a question, is it an evolution of the system, or it's really an addition, I would say? What would you say?
I'd say it's definitely an addition, and it gives people that flexibility to do a little bit more. They may be not so comfortable taking a full frame camera outside. And to give you an idea of the size of the S5, if you're familiar with the LUMIX range, you have a GH5. It's actually slightly, about the same sort of form factor as a GH5, but slightly lighter than a GH5. And GH5 is micro four thirds, remember? And for those who are worried about micro four thirds is not going anywhere. It's staying. And in fact, the G100 was just brought out recently as well. So, like you say, it's a really nice addition to the LUMIX S series, the full frame family of LUMIX. And then you've got it's complemented by all the other G series cameras. So when I knew this was coming out, immediately I thought that's going to be amazing for my street photography at night time. That's the way I looked at it. Rather than just sort of thinking, do you know what, I'm going to shoot everything on a GX9 or a GH5 or anything like that. It just gives you those options to do more things and be more creative. So, and of course, then you've got the side of it. It's going to be great for videographers, even drone pilots as well. That's what I'm quite excited about seeing as well. People will be so creative using it in different ways. And that's what I like about it too, Marco.
Right, so let me just, what you said, I think the size, that's really the big plus of this camera. Here's a comparison between the LUMIX S5 and the GH5. And you can already see it's it's got the S look, so the more not so round, so more edgy look to it. And
Yeah.
the dimensions are smaller and it's slightly lighter. And considering Micro Four Thirds is a very compact system, especially the lenses. Of course, the lenses is a different story. You need to cover a full frame image sensor circle. But
Yeah.
it's really amazing that it's smaller and lighter than the GH5, because that's for a lot of us kind of a benchmark for a very comfortable camera to hold. And I thought it's pretty amazing that they managed to do that with a full frame sensor camera.
Especially because, if we could just geek out for a little bit, is heat dispersion on smaller cameras has always been a problem. And they've sort of really sorted out that issue and enabled you to have sort of, you can shoot 4K at 30p unlimited, which I think is pretty fantastic. You can have full HD as well and shoot that unlimited as well. So sorting that out and having it dust and splash resistant, and you just look at the size of it there. A lot of people think B cams may be as well for videographers. Photographers like myself think differently again, and that's the whole beauty of a system like this. It is a hybrid camera, so you can use it for good quality stills, as well as filmmaking as well. So there's a lot of features packed into that. Everyone will read a spec sheet differently, and they'll take something from that on how they want to actually use it. So, and again, that's the beauty of photography and filmmaking.
Right.
Everyone can take something away from it.
Right. So what I wanted to do, the GH5 is a great comparison, but for me really was a comparison between the S1 and the S5 in size. And so I focused, I did a little picture series comparing the two to each other. And here you see that while, of course, the mount and the image sensor are the same size, you can really see how much smaller the S5 is in comparison. While, I've been working with it, and if we go through the images, here we see it from the side, they needed to make some compromises on the size. Yeah, so not everything fit on the larger body, of course. So, for example, here the remote is on the S1, while on the S5 it's on the other side. But that's really not a big problem, I think. So if we open the compartments, you can see everything is the same except for the HDMI. You have a full size HDMI on the S1, and you have a micro HDMI on the S5. But besides that, you have mic and you have headphone input.
And you have charging USB input as well.
That's very important. Charging, USB charging for me is super, super, super important, because I often, whenever, okay, let me just quickly go back here to our other screen. Sorry.
USB charging for me is...
Sorry, I have to switch around here. Usually I have someone doing the switching, but so today I have to do it all by myself. So yeah, the USB charging is very important for me, because whenever I get back from the job, and that's even with the Fuji cameras that I used to use before, it's super convenient. I just put it on the table, on the desk, I charge it, plug it in, and while I download the images, it's already charging. So a lot of the times, if I don't go through more than a battery, I never get the charger out. And
I find that really good for if I'm doing product shoots as well. I know I can just, especially when I'm tethered, I can shoot like that, and I can just continue to shoot. I'm not having to worry about batteries so much and things like that. And for a customer experience, if you've got someone there, you may have a creative director on your back, so you're not having to constantly charge stuff. So there's little details like that just make life easier as a photographer. So I like, details like that.
Another big advantage is, of course, to have constant power. So you can hook it up. That's what I'm doing right now. I mean, okay, now I need to switch to this camera, because this is the S1. You can tell by the nice bouquet. The other camera is, by the way, a G9. And this camera is just hooked up through the USB via the chargers comes with it, and it's taking the power from there. So it's not even draining the battery. So I had this camera and battery. You talked about heat dispersion earlier. This camera has been running for hours and hours and hours at once, especially during the whole Corona time when I did a lot of streaming and talking to people and Zoom and Skype. I'm using this camera mainly for that. It's just plugged in, and it works and it works. And we've had a hot summer here, and the camera never failed on me. So that is a huge advantage. And the S5, the same thing. Now a little added bonus, I don't know if you've ever done that, Ross, but when you run out of juice or you're on the shoot, you're having a video without being able to plug in, what you can do is have one of these USB bricks which give power delivery and run it through your sleeve, put it in the camera. Of course, it's not waterproof or splash proof anymore, but you can run with that juice if you don't want to switch. If you have the battery grip, 2 batteries will last you quite some time, but that's also a nice way to use that feature.
Now, it is, definitely.
Now let's look back at this. And looking at the back of the camera. Now, one thing that I want designers to do is whatever camera line, and obviously this will be an addition, a nice addition. I will continue to use the S1 cameras, but the S5 will be a nice addition for that second camera body for different jobs. But what I like is if the ergonomics and the layout are very similar. And same here, of course, it's not the same size, so it's not one-to-one like on the S1, S1R, S1H, where it's all the same, exactly the same. Here they had to make a few compromises. However, look at the spacing even. It's very, very similar. Wherever
it's very
possible,
intuitive.
Yeah.
So you'll pick it up. Yeah.
Right.
It'll be a natural progression.
Yeah. So I think they did very nicely on that. And if we move on, now that's that's the big difference between the two. And I think this is a constant battle that photographers are in. Do we enjoy the flip up and down flip screen or the full articulating screen? And I like the up and down screen 80% of the time. And the full articulating screen mostly on video, sometimes in selfies. And there has been one occasion where I think it's really, really useful, and that is when I'm doing, for example, an architecture shoot. And the room is very small and the lens is not wide enough. You can put the camera right back in the corner on the back of the corner and just flip the screen around. It's super convenient. So that's also a nice way to use that. Let's go back and just go through this image series one more time. This is one thing. I followed the rumors, and a lot of people thought there's only going to be one SD card slot like the Nikons in there, but it's not. It has two SD card slots.
One is UHS2 and the other one is UHS1.
Right. So we have one with a faster UHS2 speed, which, I wonder how much more would it have been to really add 2 full speed SD card slots in there. However, I think you can manage with that because the usual case is either to use it as a backup, or what I do if I want to not back up the whole card, I will shoot RAW files to the UHS2, the fast slot, and the JPEGs to the slower one. That usually works well. Now the S1, at first, the CF Express cards are kind of expensive. That's the big card slot there, and those cards are expensive, but they're like SSDs. They're super fast. And while for the S1,
they're incredible.
Yes, and while for the S1, they may not make that much sense. On the S1R with 47 megapixel, they're a blessing. So it's cool, but I think it's not necessarily on the S5. So I think that's also a good choice that they made there. And if you look from the side, the ergonomics, the grip on the S5 is a bit smaller, but it's still very comfortable. And that is something, I think the grip has to match the size of the camera body. And
you'll notice the dial as well has moved up into the shutter on the S5, whereas on the S1, obviously your aperture dial is in front of the shutter.
Yep.
But that's just something you will naturally get used to. And the ergonomics are very, very similar anyway, which which is what you want in a range when you can pick it up and it feels familiar and it's easier to use as well.
Right.
So straight away you're not having to get used to new ergonomics at all.
Right. So, and there you see is also the remote hidden, the one that didn't fit on the other side is in here. So,
and of course it's got 5-axis dual stabilization, which is about 6.5 stops.
That's very similar to the S1 and S1R range, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. So of course, you also lose the LCD display on top because just you're missing size. One thing I was a bit sad about is, you know, there's so much room on that dial. I think you could have just added a few more just for fun, but I guess it's not necessary. But the main dials here, ISO, white balance, and exposure compensation on the same space. The video button has moved from the rear to the top. Is something to get used to. You know, it would have been nice to have it in the same spot, but here again, you don't have the space, so you have to deal with that. And that's from the back there. You see again the hand grip is smaller, but if you simply look at the difference at the height from the body extension to the end of the tip of the grip, it's not a huge difference.
Similar. And these are pre-production models as well.
Right. Yeah. Everything pre-production. I'm not gonna share images with from the S5 because it's very similar to the S1 image quality, and pre-production. Yeah, they usually don't want us to share the full res images. Plus, there's no RAW converter yet. Now, another very interesting thing is they have changed the battery. Of course, smaller camera, smaller battery, and the new battery. So the S1 batteries have, let me check, it's 3050 milliamps, while the smaller one have 2200 milliamps. Now, if you look closely, well, it's decent, and if you look at the CEPA ratings, and we'll go through some of the specs maybe in a minute, if you look at the rating, it's not worse than on the S1. So, you know, the curious guy in me was like, okay, how is that possible with a smaller capacity battery? We know mirrorless cameras, they like to to eat a lot of energy. How do you manage to get that going? And then if you look at the specs, the electronic viewfinder has a bit lower resolution, for example. Those are already things that have quite some impact. But I also think they did a good job on the power management. Now, if you're familiar with these batteries and you have a GH5 line or a G9, you know that it's a similar battery, but it has a very nice feature. And this needs to be talked about as well, because it comes in handy even for those not buying the S5, because this battery capacity is higher than the one on the G9 and GH5 batteries. And let me just check this quickly. They have 1860 milliamps compared to the 22. So you get about 340 more milliamps, so which is about 15%. I think that's going to come in handy for those who enjoy to shoot a little bit longer with their current cameras as well. Okay, Ross, now you're in the picture again. Pretty much went through all the images now. Good. So that's that. Shall we have a quick look at some of the video specs? I only have the German specs here, and since you are a video pro more than me, I'm still learning all this. Do you want to go through some of them and just let us know?
Sort of loosely just skimming across the specs. So with the S5, you'll get 4K 10-bit, limited to 30 minutes. You also get 8-bit 60p. Limited to 30 minutes, but then you go 4K 8-bit 30p has got no limit, and Full HD has obviously got no limit as well. You've got the 24.2 megapixel sensor, which is the same as the S10.
Okay, Ross seems to be freezing here. Ross, are you still there?
Okay.
Skype is not being kind to us right now. Everyone is probably talking about that camera. Okay, sorry everyone about that. Okay, that's how live shows go. Let me just quickly try to get Ross back on the line. Hey, Ross.
Hello, Maro.
Oh, fun to have you. It's great to have you back. So now let me see if we are on the shared screen here. No, doesn't work. There we go. No, that's you. That's both of us. Here we go.
Brilliant. Okay. So we were talking about the video spec, and it's the same sensor as the S1. So, and you're going to benefit from the dual native ISO as you would with the other SRS cameras anyway. We already mentioned the image stabilization and the dual AS. If you worry about the recording specs, you'll see can record 4K 10-bit internally. That is not 30 minutes, as is the 4K 8-bit on 60 speed. That's within 30 minutes as well. But when you're shooting 30p 4K 8-bit, you have got no limits on that, and you've got no limits on full HD as well. So there's some quite nice things that you're liking. Obviously, more specs will come out in the next few days in more detail. It's hard to believe that it's actually lighter than the GH5, and it's got all that tech punched into it, which I think is tremendous. Another good thing is the high resolution mode as a photographer. If you are a wildlife photographer, it's got a 96 megapixel high resolution mode, and that's been altered as well. But what if you want to jump back into the videographer side of things, and you're worried about, want to know about your sort of, it's a 14 stop range gap. So that's quite, if you're going to muck up your exposures by that much, you've got a bit of a lifeline there. 180 frames per second, full HD as well, if you want to do slow motion things. But there's got so many capabilities. It's really good to get a handle on it. There is a loan system going on as well that will actually come out, so you will be able to get your hands and have a good play with it. But I think across the board, it's a really exciting camera.
Right. So I think since it's such an exciting camera, let me switch back. How about we do a little unboxing? Are you up for that? Oh, I'm losing you again. So let's hope that Skype caches itself again. All right. So here's the box. Let me just make sure.
Looking around the house. That's probably what it is.
Yeah, tell everyone to get off Netflix. All right, so this is, it's a bit smaller box, but this is the S5, the set with a kit lens. Now I think, so calling it a kit lens is kind of, yeah, well, you know, I think the current kit lenses, they are really high quality. And
it's a breaking kit lens as well, it's 20 to 60.
It's the 20 to 60, 3.5 to 5.6, correct. So, and I think they have announced some lenses today, Ross, as well. 85 f1.8, and there's going to be a whole range. 35 f1.8, 50 f1.8, and was it a 24 f1.8?
Yes, correct.
All right, so that is what they have announced, and it's going to be similar style to this lens. So still very well made, but smaller in size. So if I compare this 20 to 60 with, for example, the 50 f1.4, so this is the 50 1.4, so you get an idea of where this is heading in the future. With a smaller lens.
Oh, what's quite interesting, I mentioned earlier, Marco, is people wondering about the colour science. When a camera comes out, they're always curious about colour. So this is the same colour science as the Vericam cam. So Vericam look to it, which is for a small camera with that many features is quite special.
Yeah, and dynamic range, they talked about 14 plus stops in V-Log, V-Garment. That is, I think it's a very high standard that they have. Let me just check. There's a very high standard because it exceeds even some of the color standards. Can't find it quickly now. This is nope, sorry, I can't find it here in the specs. But I looked through them and it exceeds a color standard that. So it gives you a lot of headroom, and that's, you know, we're so spoiled with photography and RAW, and we don't get anything like RAW, but something close to it, and that really helps. So USB-A to USB-C cable is in here. There's a little charging brick with lamps telling you how full it is, and you can connect this is the little power supply that allows you to go also constant power. And oh, Ross, look at this. This is for you.
You have my camera.
They've given me two. Interesting. Maybe, I don't know. So that's all what's in here. This I won't need. This I won't need for now. And this is a camera body. And I think it would be a fun thing to just hook it up. What do you think?
Yeah. The interesting thing, there is a firmware update coming to the S5 by the end of the year, and that actually gives support for raw video over HDMI when you connect it to Atmos Ninja. So that's again, you know, we photographers, we've got, like you say, we've got the luxury of raw. You'll be able to do that by the end of the year with the S5.
And how does it compare to the S1 and S1H?
If you put the specs side by side, obviously with the S1H, there's no limit on any recording. But with the S1, it's, you know, it offers a little bit more temp internal. But we've obviously got that update now, which is on the S1 for external. So weight is the big thing that really stands out, and the form factor of it. You know, it's dust and splash resistant as the others are, and as you would expect. But if you look at, say, the GH5, the GH5 is 1.6 pounds, whereas the S5 is 1.57.
Right.
So that's just absolutely insane. With the S1 and S1H, you get embodied stabilization, you get a little bit more. And with the dual AS, you've got 7 stops. So you're only losing half a stop with the S5. So it's still pretty impressive. It's punching well above its weight, I think.
Right. Now let's quickly look at the menu. Sorry, this is what it's giving me when we're hooking it up straight. So anyone familiar with the...
And this is a pre-production model, so just
right, pre-production firmware, pre-production model. I don't know if the final one is going to be like this, but this is what it's showing right now. Anyone who is familiar with the S1 knows that many of these are very similar in the settings. However, there are a few extra things to notice. The flash sync time is 1/250th, I think, on the S5, and 1/320th, I think, on the S1. The shutter mechanism is a bit different. The S1, like I said, it's very durable and you can tell and feel, and I think they are rated, I'm gonna go on a limb here, 400,000 shutter actuations, and I think on the S5 they say 200,000.
Okay.
I'm just gonna say that because I think
that's your limbs.
It's my limb, yeah, it's my limb that I'm on. So there is a new setting, I'm just looking for it, and that is the composite. Do you want to talk about that?
So the composite will basically allow, if you want to shoot stars and things like that, it'll almost like give you a preview of what you're going to shoot. So obviously you're going to be on a tripod and shooting that way. But by the composite, what I understand, you'll be able to sort of get an idea, so with those slow shutter speeds, of what it's going to actually look like before it's shot, which makes life a lot easier. If you want to do test shots and stuff like that, and it's taking you forever. But what it does, so you use a live composite mode, it'll create an image out of several live shots. So I really want to test this and see how it works. And when you've got it in hand, it'd be great to test. But basically, the shutter will release at certain intervals of the exposure time, and it will merge all the bright parts into a single image. So really useful like fireworks as well, or a bright starry night.
Yeah. All right, Ross, I just saw that I lost your video again. I've only got you in audio. I'm just gonna call you back, okay?
Sure.
All right. Sorry about that, everyone. That's how it goes. We've, like I said, we just came up with the idea, and number three. There you are. So I can see you. Now let me check if everyone else can see you. Hope so. Switch to.
People will be getting all these updates.
There you are.
Post-hosting.
Now I've lost you on the split screen, unfortunately. Okay, now now you're on there. So I think one of the big questions is probably, for whom is this camera? What do you think?
Who's it for? Gosh, well, you're only limited by your imagination, aren't you, and what you can do. I'm a portrait photographer and street photographer, which is how we got talking, really. And so I can see possibilities for it there, but then also it's got a huge punching bag for videographers to go out there and create some amazing content because it's so portable and lightweight. Drone users as well. I can see it being used for that. Then you've got wedding photographers, bee cams, so wildlife photographers, people who want to travel and they want to have full frame and take something a bit lighter. You're only limited by your imagination and what you shoot. So I don't think it's a camera that can be pigeonholed for one sort of genre of photography. That's for sure, or videography for that matter.
Right. So, for me, like I said, I think it's so nice, light and compact in comparison. I really see this as a second camera, and it starts to really make sense. Now let me go back to the top view. Here we go. Okay, I'm just gonna unplug this because with the smaller camera body, it makes sense to maybe not attach the biggest lenses to that. It's possible, like I said, the grip is really comfortable. I have medium to large hands, so it's very comfortable. And of course, you can add a very big lens to that. But for example, the kit lens from the S1 and S1R, the 24-105, which I think is also a really fantastic lens. Yes, love that lens. Because it's also got macro capabilities. It still works fine. That's what I shot with most of the time, because I'm so used to this lens. This is the great travel all-around lens, and it's got extra image stabilization in there. So, this is still a very comfortable.
And the camera doesn't look out of place with that lens on either, does it?
No. It's totally okay. Now the 24-70 f2.8, that is a bit heavy and big in comparison. Now the 70-200 f2.8, yeah, I probably wouldn't want to attach it to that, but the f4 would still be okay. So if you compare it, 24-105 on both cameras, I think it does make sense.
Definitely.
You shoot those. All right. So one more try to. No, we don't get the split screen anymore. Sorry, Ross, we can't be in the same picture. Okay, let me quickly check if there are any questions. I should have said that in the beginning, that you can ask questions when you're watching us. Just checking so far. Yeah, the firmware update. That's what people want to know about.
So that's going to be by the end of the year.
Yeah.
Let's mention the spec earlier on the firmware update. But you'll definitely get that is plugged in by the end of the year.
And the S1R gets a 5K video update. That's what
I
they say.
believe so, and that is end of the year as well.
Right. And about the lenses, the 85 1.8 is supposed to come out, I think, this year. Was it November?
Yes, correct. Yes, November. Matt said on the announcement. And that's going to be a gorgeous lens. And, you know, having shot with an Opticron, which is the sort of 85 equivalent on the Micro Four Thirds system, that's a gorgeous piece of glass. So this coming out is going to be fantastic as well. I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah. All right. And yeah, the 35-1.4 is definitely a lens that I would love to see. Because that's something that's a great street photographer. If I had to choose one prime lens, it would be somewhere between a 24 and a 35, because you're wide enough. If you want to get close, you can get close. Well, of course, with a long lens, you don't really get to add anything to the sides of that. And I don't like to walk back too much. I like to be in the scene and in the frame. Now, of course, for portraits, an 85 is good, but I have the 7200, which I can also use as a portrait lens.
Yeah.
All right. Well, one last look at the lens, at the camera with the lens attached, the 2060 kit lens. I think it always makes sense to buy the kit lens because there are really no bad kit lenses anymore today. It fits perfectly to the camera, and the 20 gives you a little bit wider than the 24. I really like that.
It's a nice. It's also sort of setting the standard for new kit lenses, really, the 2060.
Yeah, it does. All right. Any last thoughts, Ross?
I just think it's great to see a bit of innovation out there, and you know they keep pushing it out. And like I said at the sort of top of the show, that Micro Four Thirds is not going anywhere. It's going to be there. This is just another addition to the full frame family of the LUMIX S series, and it's just nice to have a smaller form factor. Like you say, it's going to be a second camera, or other people might want a slightly smaller full frame camera, and it gives them that option. So what's been put out there, I think, is incredibly exciting. I think it's a good positive move by LUMIX, and I can't wait till mine arrives to test it out.
Right, and one more question, and that's probably easier for me to answer because I've used the cameras for a few days. What about the autofocus, Ross?
Wow. Lots of people go on about autofocus.
How could we have missed that? Of course, the autofocus. We
were talking about it before we went on.
I am so sorry. Thanks, audience, for catching that. Yeah, the autofocus has definitely improved. They said it, but I got to test it. And before I saw, we watched their announcement together, Ross, and while we watched the announcement, the official announcements, we talked and we were chatting. We said, well, let's just go live because I have the camera here. And you're waiting for it. You'll be getting it hopefully in the next couple of days. And maybe we go a bit more through with some of the new modes and stuff. We'll see if that makes sense. But the autofocus has definitely improved. Now, they are still using only contrast detect autofocus, which is okay, I think. I know everyone is talking about contrast, about the phase detect autofocus. You can do a lot with contrast because it's all on the sensor. And the great thing is you can improve it via firmware. And that's what's going to happen to the S1 and S1R as well. The camera definitely picks up faces and eyes better than the current S1 line. So if you have used that and you think the autofocus is not good enough for you, wait for this update or check out the S5. It has definitely improved. In situations where the S1 wouldn't find the face anymore, or if someone turns away, they're looking for the eyes. There's a certain standards, procedures that they're looking for. What 2 eyes, maybe a mouth, and they know it's a face. Now, it's gotten a lot smarter because if someone turns away and you don't see the eyes anymore, it's still focusing on the head, where before it would go to the body, if at all. So that has definitely improved. I think the speed has improved, and I never had huge problems with the S1 in terms of autofocus. I've been photographing for 30 years. I photographed before there was autofocus, so I know how to make things work. Maybe it's not as convenient that you just sit and say, okay, let the camera figure it all by itself. But I know that if you rely on contrast, And like I said, I think 8-9 years ago I started with Fuji, and they only had contrast autofocus, and a very bad one in comparison to what we have today. A very, very bad one in comparison, and that improved over time as well. They just got smarter, and if you know that you need to rely on contrast autofocus, the white wall is going to be hard to focus at. That's for sure. So you start to look for edges to focus for, and yeah, I never had a problem with that. And with that improvement, plus really the face detect is something. I was a bit of a snob regarding that, because I always thought, you know, why should the camera do my work? I like to focus and recompose, or just, you know, put the focus point where it needs to be. But and Ross, for you as a portrait photographer, it must be a great relief, because it gives you much more time to think about the timing and the composition when you don't have to focus air quotes on the autofocus point, right? I think you would definitely appreciate that.
Oh, especially if you've got children in the studio and they're moving around a lot, you're not having to like recompose, because the camera's actually following their movements. And even if the subject's wearing glasses, it'll focus on their eyes. But now with the head as well, that's going to be fantastic as well. With the so we have face recognition, body recognition. Now we have head recognition as well. So when faces do turn and heads do turn, they will be recognised. So that's incredibly clever that all that technology is bringing to that.
Right. Okay, Ross. So I think we're about 35, no, even 40, a bit over 40 minutes. I think that was a cool first look. Only those 2 questions, I think, were from the audience that we answered now. I don't know. I'm excited to go out with the camera on the weekend. Shoot a bit more.
Enjoy.
So thank you for stopping by, Ross. It was great talking to you. Thank you for making time so quickly, and we really just threw this thing quickly together and managed to make it work. So thank you for taking the time, and I'm really looking forward to your first images with the camera when you get it.
Definitely. All right. Take care.
Okay. So thanks everyone. Let me go back to camera 1 with a nice bouquet. There's one. So thanks everyone for tuning in. That was just a spontaneous live video because I got early access to the camera. That always helps. If you have any questions, feel free to contact me. And I think, Ross, it's the same for you. If you have questions about the camera or about the Lumix gear, Ross knows better than me, although I'm getting familiar with these cameras as well. Feel free to ask, and if you want to know anything or need more detailed photos or something, let me know. Until Ross has a camera, happy to help with that. And yeah, well, I hope that we can do this more often for other camera releases. Which, sorry, Ross, when it's not Lumix, I'm probably not going to have you on the show. So yeah, PPN, I've done these audio-wise, these audio interviews for new cameras with ambassadors from Olympus and so on. But I thought it was nice now that Corona time has really made me upgrade all this video stuff, that we're doing some videos. And feel free in the comments, let us know what you think, so we can prepare with a little bit more headroom next time, and maybe Skype is nicer to us as well. So thank you everyone for tuning in, and I'm going to be tuning out now. Thank you.